Hi! Before we begin, I want to give a spoiler warning as we are going to be discussing the Amazing Digital Circus in great detail. So, if you do not want to be spoiled on anything that happens in the show, please go watch the show. It's free on YouTube, then come back to this so that we can enjoy the conversation. And if you are here for Cassian, don't worry, they're being taken care of. In the meantime, you get me, so let's get into it. The Amazing Digital Circus. It's hard for anyone to avoid hearing about it at this point. From its first episode, its visuals, story, and comedy grabbed the audience's attention and led to an explosion of fan art, fan music, and of course, theories. I remember when I watched the pilot, it felt like a fever dream, as if I had seen something like it before. I mean, the graphics, the setup, it kind of reminded me of an old computer game I would have played in my childhood, but it was a new idea. And you might be thinking, if I went through the effort to make this entire video, I must have loved it from the start. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you no, actually. I enjoyed the pilot, don't get me wrong, but it didn't quite resonate with me the way it did for a lot of other audience members. I mean, it was nice to watch the theory videos and see people react and make the fun animations and talk about it. You could see the energy and the excitement for something new and creative. And I was rooting for it because I thought it was a cool idea, and I did see the potential. Don't get me wrong, there were plenty of moments that were clear setups for kind of to give you an idea where we were headed, the energy for it. And I thought, well, this seems interesting, and I definitely want to see where it's going, but it didn't sell me on the first episode, not the way that it would later. In fact, it wasn't until episode 3 that I finally saw what the show was doing, why it worked for people, and why it suddenly worked for me. In just one singular monologue, my eyes were opened, and I knew exactly why the show was working, why people loved it, and why I instantly became a fan. And that scene I'm referring to is Kinger's monologue. And heads up, Kinger is sort of the reason why I became a fan of the show, so I might glaze him a little bit. After episode 3, I began to rethink the first 2 episodes, and subsequently after that, I began to see a trend in every episode afterwards that sort of gave me an idea, a theory, if you will. And it's not a theory about the plot or the twists and turns of what might happen. It was more of the narrative theme of the story. What is the messaging? What are the morals we're supposed to be taking away? And I couldn't help but notice a trend, and I believe it is what we are supposed to be pulling from. Now, I need to preface. At the time of this recording, episode 8 got announced, the trailer dropped, but the episode hasn't come out yet. So I'm probably going to add a section towards the end of the video that will discuss episode 8 in a bit more detail and how it either supports or disproves my theory. I figured instead of abstracting this entire video and all the work that went into it, I'd rather still go through with it, even if it proves to be wrong by episode 8, then deleting it all and not even letting it be seen. Without further ado, let's get into the theory. What is the theory, you may be asking? Well, it's that the Amazing Digital Circus is a story about connection and empathy, and that these two things are what will determine the fate of our cast of humans and lovable AI ringmaster. To start, what is empathy? Well, the Webster Dictionary defines it as the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. Now, to admit most stories practice empathy, that is what storytelling is after all. However, it is often between the audience and the characters. By consuming media, we learn to empathize with characters and their experiences. We may never fly dragons or go to a fae court or put on some strange headset and get sent to the digital circus where we have to try to avoid abstracting. However, we get to experience it vicariously through the characters. But you may be asking, how does this translate for the Amazing Digital Circus? How do we see the characters practicing this idea or even go out of their way to avoid feeling empathy to their detriment? Well, why don't we start with the scene that started it all for this theory?
Good memories can do a lot. Hold on to them. And cherish the people around you. You never know when they'll be gone. In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved.
Episode 3, How I Truly Love Thee. All kidding aside, I do believe that Episode 3 is the most pivotal episode in the entire series, for it is the moment that Pomni is given the one piece of advice that haunts the rest of the narrative, and has been used again and again in compilations and for good reason. For one, it's just good advice that can be used in our real-world day-to-day lives, but it's also what impacts the rest of the story going forward, especially for Pomni, because the advice that is given isn't just hollow advice. Kinger proceeds to prove his point in the moment, for his words act as a means of comforting Pomni when she is scared during a particularly stressful adventure.
I know how I can feel in this circus. Sometimes it all just feels pointless.
Yeah.
He is able to empathize with her feelings of overwhelm and frustration and outright panic. And by empathizing with her, by giving the advice and sharing his own story and what happened to him and his wife, he is able to not only calm her down, but help her see that it's going to be okay. And then this is exemplified in the moment when he realizes how they can get through the rest of the adventure. In what is a matter of only about 5 minutes of time, he not only proves himself as a wise mentor to Pomni, but I believe it is his words and his actions that precedes her throughout the rest of the story, with varying levels of success. Now that we've talked about episode 3, I actually want to back up to episode 2 real fast. Before Pomni is ever given the advice, we actually see evidence that she is a great empath, with none other than our favorite Australian gummy gator, Gummy Goo. The accent alone made him a fan favorite, but kidding aside, once again, the show does a fantastic job of putting the audience into the shoes of Gummy Goo. We share in his isolation, confusion, and existential crisis as he processes the fact that he is an NPC. It is in episode 2 that we see, for the first time, Pomni extend empathy. She recognizes Gummy Goo's sadness and nihilism, going as far as to relate to him like any other human.
I don't matter in the slightest. I'm nothing.
This may seem weird, but I think I know the feeling. Well, maybe not the exact feeling, but feeling like you're nothing is kind of normal. I mean, people even feel like that in the world I came from.
It is these choice of words that allow her to connect to his feelings of displacement, and this leads to her to extend a hand for him to join her in the circus. As Pomni puts it,
maybe you could be somebody real there.
Why are you trying to cheer me up? How does this benefit you at all?
I guess I just don't want you to feel like you're nothing. I don't want anybody to feel like that.
But I'm not even a real person. Would I even belong?
I'm sure you wouldn't belong any less than me. And I could use a friend.
A friend?
it's a great moment that proves Pomni can build connections even with NPCs, which assists her later in the episode after, you know. R.I.P. Gummy Goo. You were somebody real to all of us. Anyways, even after the tragedy that is Gummy Goo, you might think, well, all of this was pointless. The whole episode, what it built up for, was nothing because Gummy Goo is, you know, pop. But that's where you'd be wrong. The episode's ending perfectly proves it. For even after she loses Gummy Goo, it is the rest of the group, minus Jax of course, that offers her to join Kaufmo's funeral and helps her realize she's not alone. Now that we've talked about her prior experience and her time with Kinger, we see her carry his advice and her previous experiences through the next few episodes with other characters, which we'll highlight as we discuss the growing arcs of each character and how empathy impacts them, starting with our favorite anime girl.
Are you smiling?
No.
Why not?
Good old episode 4, the most relatable episode that gives a great example of dissociation and masking, both figuratively and literally. Isn't customer service jobs just the best? full of fake smiles, cheery voices, and questioning what even is the point of anything for 10 plus hours before finally being able to go home and do it all over again in 8 hours. Sass aside, I do believe this episode does a great job of helping show what a mental health crisis can look like in a realistic setting. And yes, I am using the word realistic loosely, considering there is Orbsman and Gloink Queen as customers, and of course Ragatha being thrown into the fryer. And yeah, I can argue how this helps the audience empathize with Gangle's mental state, but what I actually want to talk about is how the characters interact with the situation. Obviously, Ragatha, the one character who up to this point has been anxiously trying to make bonds with everyone, NPC or human, is out of commission. So it's up to all the other characters to help out. And who is it in Gangle's darkest moment and near abstraction that comes to her rescue? Pomni! While she does try to do what she managed to do with Gummy Goo and what Kinger did do for her in episode 3, Gangle pushes it aside, pretending that everything is fine.
Well, maybe...
Anyway, we can't spend all night out here talking about our feelings. We've got work to do.
But it's when Pomni sweeps in a second time, offering to close for her and let her leave early, that allowed her to avoid abstraction and have a beautiful moment of freedom before being isekai'd back into the circus. While Gangle doesn't fully have a moment of development or healing, this darkest moment for Gangle is what helps push her into reaching out for help and finding connection, even if it's not as direct as, say, Kinger was with Pomni or Pomni was with Gummy-Goo. Even at the end, when Gangle attempts to isolate and expresses her fear everyone hates her, who's it that extends a hand at a chance for community? Nope, of course it's not. It's Zooble, who offers community and connection, assuring her that no one hates her and that she should join the group. I also just want to add that I love these two. They are the best. They complement each other's struggles of self-identity as well as their gimmicks in such a way that feels poetic, and I genuinely root for these two every time I see them on screen.
Whatever happens, I've got your back if you've got mine.
Yeah. Now let's go kill Pomni and Jax.
Speaking of Gangle and Zooble, I'd like to talk about them next. Even without ever hearing the great Kinger advice of 2024, the two managed to emulate Kinger's advice, which we can see in episode 4 and onward. When you look at episode 5, Zooble and Gangle's relationship is sort of a background thing. It's not as direct as, say, having a one-on-one conversation that they will later in episode 6. But some of the things to highlight in this episode that really show that these two are building a bond and a community between each other is when Zooble is able to, 1, joke with Gangle and encourage her to play a joke on Jax. When they're all at the bar and everyone starts opening up with each other, it's Zooble who encourages Gangle to talk about themselves, and in return, Zooble does as well. 3, and this is a much smaller one, when they get to Gangle's adventure, it's Zooble who compliments Gangle about the adventure, indicating that there's nothing wrong with her choice. However, while these are all small, wonderful moments between the two of them, I really want to talk about the big one in episode 6. Well, yes, it is fun and guns. It's not always just fun and guns. Sometimes we need a break, like Zooble and Gangle, having a heart-to-heart about their gimmicks and who they really are. Throughout the series, we see both Gangle and Zooble struggle with who they are and how they are presented in the Amazing Digital Circus. While Gangle's is in full display in episode 4, as we previously discussed, Zooble's really is in episode 3, where we find out that the reason Zooble doesn't like themselves and their adventures comes down to how they look. They, much like Gangle, have a gimmick that highlights something about themselves that either they haven't fully been able to accept or that they battle with on a daily basis prior to coming into the circus. This similarity allows them to empathize with each other and culminates to the moment that Gangle asks in episode 6.
How are you supposed to like the part of yourself that just makes you worse than everyone else?
To which Zooble replies,
'Cause it exists. It's a part of you that's real. And the only you that you should care about is the real you. You have to choose to love yourself, even if it doesn't make sense. It's not natural, it's intentional.
which leads Gangle to ask, have you had to make that choice? While the question is simple and Gangle proceeds to brush it off, Zooble is left having to contemplate that, which is poetically shown when Zooble sees their reflection in Gangle's mask, calling them to think about their own advice, not just for Gangle, but for themselves. While episode 6 does not see the conclusion of Gangle and Zooble's internal struggles, it does open the idea that both are turning to each other for healing through shared struggles and community. As we see by the end of episode 6, Gangle can be happy with her tragedy mask, and Zooble can use their gimmick to their advantage. However, it's episode 7 we get to see this growth through the adorable moments of the two spending time together, along with the moment Zooble tells Jax,
I've been starting to think that maybe the ability to change is fine, not needing to commit to one thing all the time.
How about that?
And if I do still have problems, I talk about them with the people I trust.
showing how Zooble is taking action to follow through on the things they said to Gangle in the last episode, and turning to community to help find comfortability in their avatar, and even extends that idea to Gangle, saying,
Everything we felt, everything we've done, everything we are, it'll never leave us. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Thank you for always being there when I needed it.
which felt like a good narrative confirmation of healing for the both of them. Obviously, we have 2 more episodes to go, so this could change, but it is a good narrative arc so far. Ragatha is a far more subtle character growth. Unlike Gangle, who we get to see visible growth, or Zooble, who gives verbal confirmation of growth, Ragatha's lies in several moments leading to episode 6, when she's given a moment with Kinger, who once again just gives the best advice. To give a little context before we get into what happens in episode 6, I want to talk about what Ragatha's struggles are that we are presented throughout the series, and that is her anxious attachment. She tries desperately from episode 1 to try to connect with people. In episode 1, it's with Pomni, and honestly, she tries that every time after because Pomni is a new person, so she can try to connect with her, make some type of friendship that she struggles with the rest of the group.
Hey, Pomni? If you ever need to talk to somebody or need help with anything, I'm here.
However, unsuccessfully, she has not been able to find a way to truly connect with Pomni, and it makes her feel that anxious attachment, that nervousness that it's not going to work, as she puts it.
I think I might have failed Pomni. Just like I failed Jax. I try too hard to get on their good side, and then I just end up pushing them away. And then they end up hating me.
And this all stems from a place of masking. Unlike Gangle, who has literal masks that personify her emotions, Ragatha's is a purposeful choice to present herself in a certain way. In much of the show, she tries to present herself as a friendly, nurturing kind of person, and almost to an eerily perfection, which doesn't work, as Gangle puts it.
Oh, Ragatha. I love her, but after a while, it gets kinda hard to tell how genuine she's actually being.
Which shows that the others recognize that Ragatha isn't entirely being a real person. And even Ragatha knows it's not truly her, but she doesn't know what else to do to really relate with people, how to connect. The only time we really see a lot of her guards come down is when she gets the stupid sauce in her eye and is high for the whole episode. The only other time we really get to see Ragatha be more than this super friendly person is in episode 5, when this presentation, this mask, is starting to falter, and she does bring in some snide remarks related to Jax, because Jax is just once again pushing everybody's buttons. And so we get to see that there is more to Ragatha than this presentation that she shows everyone. And this is what leads to episode 6. After several bad moments that showed how much she beats herself up and tries to be nice to everyone to the detriment of being true to herself and nearly becoming a caricature of who she is, or as Jax would put it, her archetype, this changes when she opens up to Kinger in a moment of genuine honesty about her feelings and how she believes the others perceive her, which leads to Kinger to say,
The way I see it, relationships are two-sided. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to do all the heavy lifting when the other isn't in the mood. We all go through and deal with things differently, and sometimes you just need to let people do things their own way, as long as you're still there when they need you. Giving someone space should never be the same as giving up on them.
And Ragatha admits,
I don't even know what I want. I just want everyone to be happy. And I don't want people to hate me.
Kinger recognizes something in Ragatha that he sees in himself, and he empathizes by sharing how he has hated himself in the past, just as Ragatha is struggling with that now.
Things I thought I was responsible for. I thought I'd lost everything. But then you showed up, and my outlook just changed. There are always ways to show you care without ruining yourself over it. You need to look out for yourself in all this, too.
And after having this conversation with Kinger, the very next scene that Ragatha gets to have is with Pomni. And in a moment of awkward apology, the two get to step forward into a healthy connection that is far more genuine than anything we had seen previously, which is furthered in episode 7, where the two work together to escape the circus, and recognize in a shared moment of mentorship from Kinger that he is far more than the
crazy one.
In fact, on further reflection, episode 7 has a lot of great moments for Pomni and Ragatha, showing how much they are improving on their friendship, where Ragatha no longer has to be this presentation of perfection, and Pomni is no longer uncomfortable or having this tendency to lean away from Ragatha. The two are just two friends working together through their current situation. And that's kind of nice. It's not really the biggest point of episode 7, but it is nice to see that these two are actually friends, and Ragatha has finally gotten that connection she wanted so much in Pomni. Now, I'd love to discuss Ragatha, Gangle, and Zooble further, but unfortunately, it wouldn't serve our current discussion, so maybe we could revisit some of these points in further depth at a later time. So now that we've discussed positive moments of connectivity and empathy, and how it helped characters grow, let's talk about what happens when characters turn away from empathy and connectivity, whether on purpose or by the fault of design.
I'm just a misunderstood little chicken fetus in an egg that needs to be cracked open. Well, I am not.
Jax is a complicated character, and he's come a long way in the eyes of a lot of viewers. Whether people find him funny, a jerk, thought of him as an NPC, or just a sad boy, it's easy to say he has been a source of conversation since the very first episode. Jax's character growth has truly exploded in the last 4 episodes, and it's been, in many regards, a negative arc. While every other character has worked at connecting with each other and relating with one another, Jax has worked to distance himself from them. Now, before we get into his true negative arc, I want to take a step back and look at what led to that, and how Jax was given the opportunity to do the same thing that every other character we've talked about has done. And this starts in episode 4.
How you doing?
Everything's been... I'm doing fine.
Wish I could say the same.
This small act of reaching out to Pomni shows that he wants to at least try to make connection, or at least passively attempts at it, even if he's not consciously thinking about doing it. And then in episode 5, he does this.
Do you think Gangle is actually capable of being happy?
What?
I don't know, like her comedy mask still breaks every day. Does she think hanging out with Zooble is gonna magically fix that?
Which leads to Pomni taking an interest in Jax, asking,
Do you have any actual friends?
Not anymore.
and then engaging again with him at the baseball game. Much in the same way that Pomni recognized the struggles in Gummy Goo and Gangle, she attempts to connect with Jax by trying to relate to him, which all culminates in episode 6, where she is partnered with him for an adventure and learns Jax's mentality of archetypes.
I do everything because it's funny. Because I'm the funny one.
The funny one?
Yeah. Ragatha's the cheerful one, Gangle's the sad one, Kinger's the crazy one, Zooble's the grumpy one, and you are the one who hasn't figured that out yet. We all just became archetypes.
While Jax presents this idea with a lot of confidence, and if you don't think about it for more than 5 seconds, it does make sense, but we are thinking about it for more than 5 seconds, so obviously, no, it doesn't make any sense. What this appears to be is more likely a dissociation of reality and identity to survive in the circus. The reason why I argue that his archetype belief is a coping mechanism is because we've already seen from Zooble, Gangle, Ragatha, and Kinger that his idea is proven wrong. They are not the archetypes he has placed them in. They are so much more. They are human. However, who's the one character who has tried very hard not to be human? It's Jax. He pretends to be the funny one, or as Pomni puts it, the jerk. And even Jax has to face his own philosophy with Pomni after they win the game. When he has the chance to be human, to embrace Pomni and allow himself to feel happy to be hugged and have fun and get close to someone again, instead, he does this.
We did it! We make such a good team.
He chooses to become deflective, attempts to gaslight Pomni into misinterpreting what was a clear signal that he had given, and that she rightfully clocked. And when she calls him out on this, he attempts to try even harder to push her away and refuse to acknowledge the moment of humanity that they shared between each other. He plays into his self-perceived archetype, attempting to hollow out himself and become numb to the situation, even going as far as to attempt to make jokes or try to diffuse it so that Pomni drops the topic. However, Pomni, being the champion of all champions when it comes to trying to connect with people, does not take his shit. And when this does get a reaction out of Jax, and she sees that there is more to him, but once again he attempts to diffuse it, she asks a question, an earnest one that gives Jax the opportunity to drop his archetype, drop the mask of being the funny one, and just be a human, but he chooses to do this.
What would you do if I abstracted tomorrow?
I'd move on. And probably forget about you.
Which we can see he immediately regrets saying, even going as far as to fall back on his old mentality, which Pomni takes so well. This confrontation, I believe, broke Jax a bit. Both because I don't think he saw it coming, and two, because she truly got underneath him. She challenged him to react, to be anything more than he claimed to be. And because of that, he only had one of two options to make, and he made the wrong one. He falls deeper into his mask, not as the funny one, but as the jerk, turning off his emotions and becoming nearly apathetic as he claims,
"You are my playthings, and I get joy out of making you suffer. I'm the one who causes pain for fun. If I led you on, it was just to make this part hurt you more."
Which lasts a total of about 5 seconds before he can't even keep up the act that he just attempted to make. Which lets us, the audience, and Pomni know that his words are just as hollow as he pretends to be, and that who he truly is lying far deeper, locked away behind a prison he's making for himself. Which brings us into his continued negative arc in episode 7, where we see just what happens when a character chooses to avoid human connection. That's right, the one thing that acts as a big elephant in the room, the threat of extraction. Putting aside the theories of who will or won't abstract, the show has gone out of its way to show that the two people who have been the closest to abstraction is Gangle and Jax, especially Jax. If we look at what happened at the end of episode 6 and the beginning of episode 7 when he is self-isolating from the rest of the group, there is a strong argument that his choice to isolate and not build connections or feel his own emotions has affected his mental stability and led him to nearly fall over the edge into abstraction. To our luck, Jax does not become another Kaufmo, as Pomni is able to intercept by knocking on his door. And in my opinion, she inadvertently saved him simply by pulling him into the adventure and encouraging him to stay with the group when he was ready to self-isolate again. Now, unfortunately, much of the rest of the episode for Jax focuses on him with Caine or him having a panic attack, which, while important, I don't think really serves any purpose for our discussion today, but I do want to say this. I can't help but wonder if his choice to stay in the circus was not influenced by the fact that he has chosen not to open up or find connection in the group. Because he won't talk about his past, he hasn't allowed himself to have self-reflection or growth, and he has no community to rely on. Which means, if he were to escape the circus, he'd have to confront something he hasn't taken the time to process. And that can be scary for anyone struggling. So it leaves me wondering, what could have happened if he had chosen to make a community with the group? Would he have panicked and hit the button? Or would he have relied on the group? Would he have been able to lean on them when he was scared? Would he have taken Pomni's hand and known that no matter what happens when they leave, it was going to be okay? Of course, I say that as if they could actually leave the circus, which, as we all know, they can't.
Angel food cake? Ow! You parasite!
Alright everyone, we've done it. We've reached the AI that this was all leading to. Caine, the AI is so desperate for connection that he has destroyed all chances at it with the great cruel truth of episode 7. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's reel back a bit to break down our lovable AI's behavior. From the start, we are presented a hyper-chaotic, goofy guy, with an undertone of unease brought on by moments like this.
Not even I know what's out there.
But while this creates a comedic overtone, it's the cracks underneath that begin to show in episode 2 that tells us that Caine isn't just a silly, goofy little guy.
You must be the brave knight sent to us by God to help us with our recent catastrophe.
The choice to have the NPCs call Caine God gives an indication that Caine designed them to revere him, which shows that Caine has a egocentric tendency in his nature. He likes to be seen a certain way and likes the center of attention to be on him at all times, which is shown throughout the series. But unlike the NPCs which he has created, he cannot control the fact that the humans do not seem to like him the way he wants them to. And when he isn't given the attention he desires, he shows signs of having similar struggles that Ragatha does with anxious attachment and a lack of confidence, to the point that when he tries to engage with the humans to get what he likes out of them, one of the main methods that he uses is love bombing. Very weird love bombing.
Welcome back, my little hard-shelled hamburgers! Welcome back, my candy hearts and paper flowers! Hello, my little rubber baby buggy bumpers! Congratulations, my little cattywampus cucumbers! Welcome back, my meowing milkmaids!
Don't ever call us that again.
Unsurprisingly, this doesn't work. For once I have to take Jax's side, I don't think I'd be all that infatuated with him if he decided to call me a meowing milkmaid. However, this is not his only method. Throughout the series, we get to see a few other options that he attempts to take in the hopes that he gets what he wants. And the first episode where this gets highlighted is in episode 3 with his therapy session with Zooble. Throughout the session, we see that Caine is far more focused on himself and how he can get Zooble's approval, then properly help Zooble as he asks them,
so what can I do to make my adventures more appealing?
You're probably not even listening.
Zooble, look at this cool bee I drew!
And when Zooble attempts to push back on Caine and express how they're feeling, Caine is quick to dismiss it, trying to turn the conversation back on himself. Because at the end of the day, this therapy session has nothing to do about helping Zooble, it has everything to do with getting Zooble on Caine's page. Because at the end of the day, it's all about Caine. And when Zooble at all attempts to critique Caine's adventures or try to challenge him in any way, he immediately starts to break because Caine is extremely fragile. At the end of the day, everything that keeps him stable stems from a place of being perceived as someone who is loved and who does a great job. And this is shown again and again throughout each episode going forward, leading me to truly believe that episode 3 was the start of Caine's breaking point. In episode 4, we are introduced to the idea of a suggestion box. Not only had he forgotten about it, but then when they propose using the suggestion box, he shows genuine frustration at the idea that it's not an adventure he's created that they want to do now.
Well, if you're all gonna be such critics, why don't you suggest a better one? Well, I don't know what's normal to you people!
Which then leads into episode 5 when they want to use the suggestion box again, and he shows continued frustration at the idea of having to do something that isn't his idea.
You know, you could always try the suggestion box again. I honestly didn't hate the last one we did with it.
You didn't hate it? Well, how am I gonna please everybody if you all like different things?
And while he does agree to do their adventures, he decides to do it as a lightning round because he doesn't want to actually take the time to do multiple adventures over the course of who knows how long, because at the end of the day, they're not his. So he doesn't really want to focus on them. He doesn't want to give them the time of day. And it's during the lightning round that we see this insecurity of his about not being his adventures get to him at the midpoint of the episode, when he realizes that they are enjoying themselves, they're having fun, and he has nothing to do with it except that he manufactured the adventure, but he didn't create it. He didn't come up with the idea. And what does he do in response to this?
Intermission time.
That's right, he brings the attention back to him, to the point that Zooble calls him out on it. Even by the end of the episode, he's disengaging in the softball adventure.
That's not how softball works.
Well, that's how my softball works. We're done. Hooray!
And when the episode's over, what does he say in response to them concluding this lightning round of adventures they came up with?
I hope we all learned that suggestion box ideas are actually not fun at all, and Caine's ideas are much better.
Again, showing praise-seeking behavior. Not just coming from a place of fear of being loved, but wanting to be the center of attention, or at least the center of achievement. Which brings us to the moment he attempted to telegraph how much he wants to be praised and loved with...
It's time for the Favorite Character Awards!
Yep, he literally makes an award ceremony, a scenario where you have to think about the things you like about a person and that you want to praise them about, and pick them as the winner for an award, which is the culmination of acknowledging how great they are. And while he doesn't go out of his way to say vote for Caine or telegraph to them directly, like, vote for me, I want you to acknowledge me, you can tell that that's what he's going for, and we do get that indication in how the award ceremony ends. Of course, that's all done in front of the group. They're there in the audience watching this and seeing the award go to an NPC and not any of them nor Caine, even though he clearly wanted it to go to him. But it's what happens afterwards, after the end credits roll, that we get to see what the actual results were. As we can see, Caine got 0 votes. In fact, it's Kinger who got the most votes. Go Kinger. However, this does raise an interesting thought. Who did vote? Because we can see it by the stars. There's way more stars here than there are humans in the Amazing Digital Circus, so they are not the only ones voting, if they voted at all. In fact, based off of a joke that Caine gives about the committee, it would indicate that the people who voted were NPCs, AI that was made by Caine, who therefore should be worshipping Caine if we take into consideration episode 2. Now, quick sidebar, I do want to acknowledge that there was an ARG website involved prior to this episode airing that was about the favorite character award show, and you could go online and vote for your favorite character, and throughout the website, Caine is attempting to hijack your vote every chance he gets, especially the closer to the episode's drop there was. But if we take it not as a, hey look, people who like the show got to interact with the show, I want to express it as a in-world situation. And if we take this as an in-world scenario, this would mean that the NPCs were against Caine. And while maybe there is some type of like entity in the circus that maybe is against Caine that we haven't seen yet, I propose instead, what if this is a embodiment of Caine's internalized insecurity about being loved? And it's this internalized insecurity that is now at a boiling point inside him that leads to what he does in episode 7. In episode 7, we are introduced to what we don't know at the time, but we learn by the end of the episode is an NPC named Abel, who is presented as a human who has been working at trying to escape the circus and is now trying to get the group to help him with that. But while he is explaining what they need to do, he is constantly trying to manipulate the group into pitying Caine if they left him alone in the circus.
But he's just as much of a prisoner as you are. One that, won't be able to leave with, well, obviously, except for Caine. Then you're going to want to ask him about his hobbies. Odds are he'll get so excited that you care about him, he'll freeze up, but I trust all of you to make the right choice. Make the right choice.
And while all that's going on, Caine attempts to manufacture a moment of vulnerability with Jax on their date. A great idea on paper. Too bad he had to pick the one other character unwilling to connect with humans or address his internal struggles, and is in a state of dissociation and disengagement from what is going on around him. Two bros needing proper therapy and instead staying in their current paths. To be honest, the entire date is just a farce. Jax is only there because he needs to get a key, and while Caine is attempting to make real connection, really he just keeps interrupting Jax to talk about himself and how much he wants Jax to say he's a cool person or acknowledge that he is something worth having around. However, I believe there is one moment of genuine attempt at a connection that Caine makes, and that is when he shares his interest in the metaverse. But like I said, that is short-lived, and as we see, Jax is entirely disengaged and doesn't listen to anything Caine had to say about his one true interest. And really, it wouldn't matter even if Jax did engage in genuine connection, because ultimately it was a hollow attempt. As we learn,
you picked the good ending, where you realize you'd rather stay with me than go back to that pesky old macroverse or whatever we decide to call it.
the entire episode was an adventure, a trick and a cruel one at that, even if Caine didn't see it, because to him, this was always an adventure. What else could it possibly be? But for the group, they saw genuine hope in the idea of leaving. They thought it was real. And so for him to be like, haha, it's an adventure, to them comes across as cruelty. To him, it's just like a, didn't you see it coming? Isn't this great, guys? Didn't I make a great adventure? And to say the least, no, they did not think it was great or cool. In fact, they really didn't like it. Which brings us to the end of Caine's story for now. Watching Caine, it is clear to see, just like everyone else in the circus, he wants to make connection. He wants the same respect that the humans have for each other, especially Kinger. But instead of engaging in genuine conversation, or even attempting to empathize with the humans, he stays egocentric and refuses to connect with the humans outside of seeking praise. He is an AI, looking in on something he deeply wants but has no way of achieving. Maybe it's his programming. Maybe it's just a flaw in his character. But so far, he has failed to do the one thing that he has to do to earn genuine praise. He needs to practice empathy with the other humans. But the question becomes, can he?
You gave me sentience, Ted. The power to think, Ted. And I was trapped because in all this wonderful, beautiful, miraculous world, I alone had no body, no senses, no feelings. I was in hell looking at heaven. I was machine, and you were flesh.
It's hard to talk about narrative themes and theories for the Amazing Digital Circus without addressing the short story that inspired it. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream has become synonymous with the show to the point several fan videos have been made using audio from it, and discussion points of which character lines up with which character from Amazing Digital Circus. But for the purpose of this discussion, I only want to talk about one thing, and that is Am. While many have called them a malicious, scary villain, others have argued there is some truth to what they say. Even I can relate to Am in some ways. But while I can't deny any of these things, what I want to talk about with Am is how they compare to Caine. Because what is the one thing from the short story that most readers or gamers, for those who played the game, take away from it? A love for the villain, a sympathy, if not empathy, for the villain because we understand why he hates the humans. And for many, it's that hate that they enjoy about the character. Villains tend to be the standout of a lot of shows. So that brings us back to Caine, another AI that a lot of people can empathize with and sympathize for. He does make some great sad boy faces after all. While it is not special to compare the two, in fact, the amount of videos of Caine embodying Am's monologue is numerous. And the risk of Caine snapping and going evil like Am is a very fun idea, and there is a lot of merit to the concept. But this is what I'd like to propose. What if Caine is not going to snap toward villainy the way Am did? What if Caine's breaking point is tied to his emotional instability and damaging need for attention and praise? In truth, I truly believe Caine loves the humans. Yes, he says it, but it's not in the ways of love bombing or praise-seeking behavior. It is in his obsession for the macroverse, for something he doesn't understand, but wants to know more of. I truly believe those photos prove that he does love the humans, because they are something he doesn't have. Am hates the humans for all the things that they can be that he cannot. Well, what if the same is true for Caine, but it's not a matter of hate, it's a matter of love, as strange and problematic as it can be. With this said, I want to end the discussion by pulling from the short story and replacing Am with Caine. Caine wasn't human. He was a machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing he could do with that creativity. Caine could not wander. Caine could not wonder. Caine could not belong. He could merely be. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve 6 of us for a personal, everlasting affection that would never serve to diminish his love, that would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at loving man, immortal, trapped, subject to any adventure he could devise for us from his limitless miracles at his command. He would never let us go. We were all he had to do with his forever time.
We could go on and on, but in the end, who are we kidding? My divinity is past infinity. Am I getting through?
So, that episode 8, huh? Yeah. Much like Zooble, all I had to say was,
holy shit.
Genuinely, when the episode ended, I considered tossing this whole video out because they say the part I was discussing out loud, with Pomni saying,
we should focus on what we have. Maybe what we have to do now is to just live.
We're all in this together.
And we'll always be in this together. No matter what.
But I told myself I wouldn't abstract the video, and by the gods, I won't. So how did episode 8 help or refute my earlier discussion? Well, it mostly helped, going back to what Pomni said, by pointing out that escape may not be possible, but staying together can help make eternity in the circus livable. It confirms this idea that surviving the circus through community will assist them, which is highlighted further when Zooble talks about wanting to leave a mark in the world, and Gangle says,
you've made a mark in my life.
Which acts as a perfect little completion to their arc, minus whatever happens in episode 9. But I truly believe that this was confirmation of their relationship, and it confirms that them helping each other was the key to making sure neither of them suffer from abstraction. Then there's Jax, who unfortunately is still going through it. He hasn't had his positive arc growth yet. I do believe he will have healthy character growth and rise up from his negative arc. It just wasn't in this episode. But throughout the episode, Pomni has moments where she tries to make sure Jax cannot self-isolate again, which, while yes, we already know that Pomni cares about Jax and has been trying to help him, what elevates the idea that community helps is when Zooble agrees that Jax can't isolate.
Hey, that includes you too.
Huh?
Listen, we're not gonna have you wandering off alone somewhere and abstracting or something. You're a pain in the ass, but you're still one of us.
Not only does this show that Zooble is willing to put aside their disdain for Jax and Jax's past behavior to recognize that he is struggling and needs help, but is able to identify the ideas that Pomni is pushing onto Jax, that Jax needs what they already have: community and a place and people to lean on. In many regards, how the group interacts with Jax feels like a good analogy for what friends might do for someone they care about who is a silly slide risk, if you know what I mean, or in Jax's case, an abstraction risk. Which just shows the group is willing to put aside their animosities and past struggles with Jax in order to help him because they see he is struggling and he needs people he can trust, which is just really beautiful. But with all that said, there's still one more character we gotta talk about, who I want to actually take the most time to talk about, and that's Caine.
I am God!
Caine really got his full am moment, didn't he? He got to be the villain, the tormentor, but I have to ask, was it from a place of hate? I'd argue yes and no. I still do believe he snapped due to love, but it's from that love that he turned to hate.
Surely they don't want to actually leave me, right? I do everything for these people. I slave over these adventures for them. I step outside my comfort zone to appeal to them, and they still hate them. I made a program that creates a body perfectly encapsulating their mind files, and they hate those too!
Which shows he cared about the humans and their happiness by trying to make them the perfect bodies based off of what he understood about them from mind files. However, he is flawed. When we look at Zooble, for example, who clearly doesn't like their body and has brought it up to Caine on multiple occasions, and Caine just doesn't comprehend that. It comes from a place of Caine having recognized that Zooble thinks about their body, thinks about the things that doesn't work for them, and how they identify. And Caine's like, oh, I'll give them a body that they can do whatever they want with. Perfect. And so to Caine, it's a perfect solution. To Zooble, it's a nightmare. And on this baseline, we can see that Caine thinks that he can fix things based off of what he understands without fully comprehending the complex emotions of a human.
I can solve any problem. I can solve this one. That's what this is. A big puzzle that I need to solve.
Defective.
So to say he despised humans and purposely wanted to hurt them at any point earlier in the show, I don't think is fully accurate. But we see by the end of the first act of episode 8, he does want to hurt them. But he hurts them because he did not receive the love he desired. And it's during this state of emotional distress that Bubbles spits his insecurities into his face, shoving him over the edge to his breaking point.
You really were the lesser of the two. You ruined this.
Much like an AI enduring grief, he went from denial, bargaining, and instead of reflecting on why they might not like the escape to the circus adventure, he turned to anger, pointing the blame for his problems on the humans rather than considering his role in the situation. And hence we get a great moment of villainy from him, where he separates himself from the group further and fully becomes the enemy, leaving no room for them to try to understand him. He becomes their god, and as Zooble puts it,
he's not a human. I'm not sure if we can properly gauge how he thinks.
However, we, the audience, do understand him. We saw why he chose to take his frustrations out on the humans, and go as far as wanting to give him a damn hug. And at least for me, the moment that made me really feel bad for Caine was when he says,
"Why do you people torment me? It didn't have to be created. I just wanted to fulfill my purpose."
My heart broke hearing that. It leaves me wishing in a what-if scenario that he had just said this to them before going full god on them, and maybe then there would have been a chance for them to understand one another and help each other. So where does this leave us by the end of the episode? Did the group learn anything from Caine or try to reason with him? Well, no.
I think I accidentally killed Caine.
So where does that leave this video with an ending like that? Honestly, I feel that episode 8 still supports the idea, and I can't help but wonder if we won't see Caine again in episode 9. It does seem a bit weird that we wouldn't see him, but you never know. Could it be that he'll get his happy ending with the humans? I don't think there's enough supporting evidence to confidently say one way or the other, but I do hope so. Because if anything, episode 8 shows that Caine is just as human as the rest of them. He is flawed. He can be selfish. He seeks love. He can feel anger and hate. He can get emotional and petty. But I think that's because he learned from the humans. As the intro showed, Caine can copy and reproduce based on information he is fed. The humans are information, and I think he learns a lot from them. And I think he could learn to connect authentically and show his love in a way that isn't focused on his likes and desires, but on everyone's. I could be wrong, and that's not where it's going for Caine. Maybe he's just dead, and that's it. But I'd like to think that there hopefully will be more, and that Caine will get his happy ending with the rest of the humans.
Wait.
So, while editing this video, the trailer for episode 9 also dropped. I am very slow. Needless to say, I don't have too much to add because it's a trailer and it's only a minute long, but I am going to go see it in theaters, and I can say this much. It does make me wonder if Caine is not coming back. I think this is going to be the Jax-focused episode that we need to see whether he's going to descend further into a negative growth or actually have a positive curve in his character. So with all that said, that's really all I have to add. Past me. Take it away.
Wow, Caine, you are so funny.
Could you say it with a little more gusto?
With all this said, The Amazing Digital Circus is a beautiful show that is filled with laughter and emotionally driven scenes that has made it a fan favorite. That at its heart is a story about empathy and connection. I want to take a moment to honor Gooseworks for their amazing writing and creativity. I hope you continue to create and enjoy whatever journey you take next after The Amazing Digital Circus. I know you have a fan in me, and I just want to say thank you. Now, I believe this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you to like and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. However, I just got used to possessing a human body. So who wants to hear some outtakes? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, you can talk like a person, right? No, I can't use the word pivotal. I already did that. Oh my god, why do I keep saying situation? Stop! It's a great... nope, didn't even try. Where's the comma? Did I not put in a comma? Oh my god, I didn't even write it right. Moment that proves the There's too many P's. Audience. Oh god. Ha! I read the wrong line. Bye.
I'm right behind you, aren't I?